Hello, my fellow nerds, and thanks again for watching another episode of Nerd Boy Gaming. I am NerdBoy81. Well, I'm a couple days late, but Ragnarok is here, and I got my hands on it, and I got to play some on both my Xbox Series X as well as on my PC, which is running again a 5070 Ti. So I wanted to share with you guys my experiences, my first impressions on both the Xbox Series X as well as the PC, and how I think Wildcard actually got this one right. So let's jump in and talk about Ragnarok on Ark Survival Ascended. Now, after the drop, I started with my Xbox Series X, and I played about 20 minutes or so. I didn't have a whole lot of time this weekend, but I wanted to at least get my hands on it a little bit, and so I jumped in and played for about 20 minutes. And during that time, there were a couple things I noticed. The water looked pretty good, still a little pixelated in places. They still really have a hard time, I think, with the reflections out in the ocean. It's kind of still has the little box and pixelation. It is better than it was on Unreal Engine 5.2 that they were on before, so the upgrade has made it better. And this map definitely had moments where the water looks really nice. There was still some pop-in on the Xbox Series X. It wasn't as noticeable, and that's partly because I think they did a great job on this map with the ground cover. They don't have as much grass and rocks and ground cover that is required to pop in. So some of that texture really did help. I feel like they really minimized it on this map in comparison to, for instance, the island when it was remade. So I do think that has helped with some of it. The pop-in, still there, but a lot better. I felt like the sky looked pretty decent. The foliage looked pretty good. In my 20 minutes with my Xbox Series X, the game ran really well. I never had any dips in performance. I felt like it tracked pretty well, and it generally looked pretty decent. Now, when you moved quickly, you saw more of that pop in, and there was still some issues with textures around grass and some of the foliage, so it's not perfect, but it definitely looks better than it did on 5.2. And of course, there's still a lot of floating rocks. Now, maybe not as bad as some maps, but just in my 20 minutes on my Xbox, I did come across multiple locations where some of them were extremely obvious that the rocks were just not placed right. But for the most part, it might have been less than normal, but still seeing plenty of floating rocks. Now, I will say, though, I still don't think that this game is as pretty on the Xbox Series X as other games of the same genre. And I always like to reference Red Dead Redemption 2. I still feel like that even old generation that looked better in general when it came to textures and rendering and the graphics, the clouds, and things like that. So like I said, I played for about 20 minutes on the Xbox Series X, and it generally ran really well. It's definitely the best map as far as the way I think it performed at launch compared to any of the other maps. At launch, specifically. So then I played on my PC. And this is where I was able to put in probably 3 to 4 hours of gameplay. And to be completely honest, that was not my plan. I just got sucked into it. This map, I've never played. I've never played on ASE. I've never played it. I've never watched anything. I'm completely blind when it comes to Ragnarok. This map is very pretty and has a lot to explore. It's a big map with a lot of things happening. And it really did draw me in. Now on my PC, I'm running an i7, I think it was a 147 i7, 64 gigs of RAM. I've got a 5070 Ti. So there is a lot of power on my gaming PC. And I ran in two different states. I ran a lot on Epic, and I ran some on lower settings on kind of high and Epic, but kind of lowered in some areas. And on the high performance, I was getting 35 to 40 frames per second, pretty standard. Sometimes it would go up to 50, but it never really dropped below 30. When I played on just pure Epic, I was getting 65 to 70 frames per second. It seemed pretty good. I didn't see any real dips, but honestly, my eyes are so attuned to 30 frames a second from Xbox and all the gaming that I've done on console that it actually was a little bit weird and a little bit jarring for me to be at those higher frame rates. So I did spend most of my time playing kind of on a lower setting just so that I would have so it looked cleaner, but there wasn't necessarily 70 frames a second. But in my 4 hours of game time, I really only had one crash, and that crash was specific to when I was changing settings from high to epic. It just that I had to reboot. It took a few minutes. That was really the only time it really had any issues. I was able to explore Ragnarok, look at different things. I was able to kind of explore the map, and for me, it looked really nice. In fact, there was a couple moments when there was a storm out in the distance, and while I don't think the lightning looks phenomenal, there were a couple moments though where, as I'm building my base on this little cliff, and I would look out the window, and I had to stop and just be like, wow, this looks good.
Super crisp.
Again, I'm running on a higher end PC now, so when I look at my Xbox Series X, I don't know that I would have had that experience, but on this higher end rig, it definitely looks really good. Now, to be fair, I did talk to my sister, who is running on a 2080 Ti Super. She only has 16 gigs of RAM and is using an early version of the i9. So her computer's a little older, but she mentioned that it looked better than any other map had looked, and it actually ran really well. I think all in all, when you look at the performance of this map looked and performed about as good as I think they could have done. And Wildcard did a better job on the release on this. It was a day late. They did most of the time with very little communication. Honestly, though, I wasn't really paying that close of attention because I had a guest in town, so I wasn't really on the top of my mind, which is partly maybe why I wasn't as frustrated. I just, all in all, felt like this was Wildcard's best map, what they really needed to do. I'm excited to get into this further. I didn't get any of the DLC, the Lost Colony stuff, so that's something I'll have to look forward to getting in the future, and kind of getting an understand of that expansion pass. But all in all, I think the game, for the first time in a while, I feel like the game looked about as good as you could expect for this map. Now, for me personally, having never seen this map, never played it before, knowing nothing about it from the island, or I'm from ASE, I gotta say I was sucked back in, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't have that typical ARC fatigue of just being frustrated with the way it looks, not performing the way as good as it could. I spent 3-4 hours just playing, and I didn't even necessarily have to do that. I had enough to be able to form my first impressions of the game, but I just kept going. And in fact, I spent a lot of time building a little shack, struggling a little bit because I wanted it to be a kind of a cliffside shack, and I can't figure out how to deal with the roof and the actual deck that I want to make. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. If you stick around, some of that will be in the video. But just exploring this map, flying across and seeing these beautiful waterfalls and giant caverns and creatures I hadn't seen before, and just in general, it was the first time in a long time that I was excited to play Ark. I'm excited to jump into Ragnarok. Makes me want to actually go back and finish the island faster so that I can get back to this map. I'm very excited for what this is, and hopefully this is the first step in the road to maybe redemption for them. You can say a lot of things about their business practices and what they've done and how we've gotten to this point, and whether or not they're, you can argue their perspective of what they've done to get here. There's a lot of bad to talk about, but just in general, when it comes to this map, Wildcard did a good job. I'm excited for this map. I think it's a win for them. So guys, if you're new here and you haven't done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button. There's going to be more of this to come. I'm going to be finishing the island soon. We've got Ragnarok. I've got other games that I've been playing. A lot more to come here on this channel, so make sure you hit that subscribe. And of course, if you want to join the members, I did open it up, and I'm still haven't really put any content. I'm kind of waiting to see if anybody is interested, but if you are, leave a comment below. Tell me what you would want to see, and I will do my best to share and give you guys opportunities. So thank you so much for coming. Until next time, have a great day.